Major Tom, commencing countdown, engines on, check ignition and may God's love be with you.
This is Major Tom to ground control, and I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in the most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today.
Hello and welcome to the virtual tales of Binary Arcadia, where the game's gone long into the night. Today we thought we'd talk a little bit more on the theory of Death Stranding. We have some really interesting insights that we weren't able to shoehorn into our previous 2-hour analysis. So I think now is the perfect time for us to talk about that. We're going to talk about how we think the Death Stranding has come to be, and Tabz has got some really cool ideas about that. I don't necessarily agree with him on some of his ideas, just because I don't think there's enough evidence for his ideas, but we're going to hear him out and we're going to see how it goes. So Tabz, are you there?
I'm indeed, mate. Thanks for making me sound like a charity case that needs humouring.
Oh, sorry, I did not mean to come across like that.
No, not at all, mate. I think there is an element of that anyway. I think, we're just really excited about the game, and it's
definitely.
just, one, it's an excuse to make another video. Although, I would say a lot of this stuff we did kind of make mention to in the last video. This is an attempt to kind of bottle it up in a bit more of a coherent...
and tie loose ends up, I guess.
Yeah, flesh it out a little bit more since then, because, we're always down the rabbit hole of Death Stranding, trying to connect the dots in our mind, if you like.
And it's interesting to note at this point that this is what Kojima likes people to do. He likes to put his ideas out there, hint little things. Lots of parts in trailers are completely out of context with how they are in the game, so they lead you to think one thing but could actually be another thing. Something that seems massive could actually be completely inconsequential. It's
literally like the whole theme of the game, isn't it? Connection. And tantalizing little teasers to players who then have to try and talk in forum to build a full picture, share theories. That's all. What is it doing? It's stimulating connection and communication. And,
exactly.
The whole original reveal, if you remember, it had to have a certain amount of views, didn't it? Or simultaneous views
before the full video. Yeah, before the full video revealed.
Supposedly, anyway. So he's all about that. He loves it, doesn't he? I suppose on that, and that we shared a comment with somebody who chimed in about that to say that, because he's had some criticism, hasn't he, about his marketing approach. From, I think, was
specifically from the God of War 3.
Yeah,
was it?
Not the last God of War, because I think he's quite pally with him. Corey, I forget his surname. We'll flash it up. But yeah, I think the chap before that, is it David Jaff? No.
Yes,
is
rings a bell, I think. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, anyway, but yeah, essentially he's just a bit puzzled. I think he kind of says he kind of likes it and he's still excited for the game, but I think he's coming from like a mainstream media place and how honed the marketing approach normally is, and this just seems wacky, and dictated by Kojima, because it probably is. It's exactly what he wants it to be, and I suppose he's probably worried about how that's going to come across to the audience at large, not just Kojima's fans. But personally, it's just been a pleasure, hasn't it, Rich, just rambling on about this to eternity.
Yeah, definitely, and it certainly builds my hype for the game. I just hope it doesn't become overhyped.
I know you had some fears before we started, didn't you, Rich?
Yeah, I did. I read an article today that was theorising about some of the things that might be involved in the game, and at least 4 of them I was like, I'll be so disappointed if it's that. And I was like, oh my God.
That's a really good segue, because we will share this article in the description. It was Games Radar.
Yes.
And it essentially kind of puts all of the or what their opinion is the best theories all together on one page, and there are some crazy ones, but interesting nonetheless. Even some of what we're going to talk about today is derived from that. So shout out to Games Radar. So should we kind of try and start to split this atom and get into things a little bit?
Yeah, come on then, Tabs. So where are we going to start?
Well, I suppose we'll just point to the picture to kind of kick us off. So what have we got? We've got a big moon. We've got, I've actually printed a graphic now, Rich, not drawn it, which is Ludens, the character Ludens, the mascot of Kojima Productions, stuck slap bang in the middle of the moon. We've got a flag stuck in, which says on it, from Sapiens to Ludens. And then, believe it or not, this is supposed to be like a space station, which we'll come back to later. Just to provide a bit of background detail and context, I believe that Kojima's taken this. There was, I think, a Dutch historian called Johan Huizinga. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but
nice.
In 1938, he wrote a book called Homo Ludens, and essentially what a lot of it was to do with was the value of play in our society or in our culture, and how, I think it's something that's inevitable and that's a necessity in many ways. I think there's a lot of internet theorists out there that believe that Kojima's taken that, kind of lifted from it. A bit later on, I think 20 years previous to Death Stranding, Kojima and a friend of his, and I think he's worked with him, I think he might be a designer, Shinkawa, and again, we'll fact check this and flash these up, had a chat with him about the idea of an astronaut exploring a digital space. So, I mean, Rich, do you just want to say how that links up with Ludens, what we've seen so far?
So firstly, we've seen that I don't know why, but Kojima thought he would launch a trailer to debut Kojima Productions mascot, which in itself seems like a lot of time and effort went into something that apparently is to just show the company's mascot. Anyway, I digress. And that literally showed Ludens on the moon, and I think I'd read that people have checked the geography or something of it, and it actually is our moon. He stakes a flag into it, and I think there's a whale that crashed, that breaches and crashes, that turns into code. So that's sort of borne out in that trailer that we've seen.
Yeah, and I think it's one of these things. It's obviously become an aspirational symbol of his company, of Kojima Productions. This character that symbolises, I suppose, players, because Ludens, as we've said, means to play. And we are players. And Kojima thinks that's a big part of aspiring to be probably a good games developer, but more than that, to really revolutionise the medium of video games. So, yeah, I mean, we'll come back to that. He's obviously denied till he's blue in the face that Ludens is going to be a part of Death Stranding. But I think even you, Rich, despite your uncertainty about my theory, you'd agree that, it's almost inevitable, isn't it, at this stage?
Oh, yeah, I think it's in the game in some way, whether it's a precursor to the Death Stranding or it's happens, because I think we've theorised that the game finishes on the moon. I'm not so in on that theory now, but I definitely think in some point we play as Ludens, or Ludens is on the moon in this game. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we'll rule out in this video, we really just wanted to touch upon the literal goings on in the game. So, the story, the narrative, the literal happenings of Death Stranding. So we're going to explore, as Rich has pointed out, the Death Stranding itself, why it happened, the context, the characters and why they're involved, at least based on our own theories. But, it's really important to note that there's clearly a really dense jungle of metaphorical meaning that Kojima is overlaying on this game. So it's just to very kind of neatly perhaps talk about some of those themes, because it's probably some good stuff for another video that we can really dive into. But as we've known, Kojima is a big fan of being what's referred to as meta. So if you kind of do a Google check of what meta means, essentially it's being self-referential, like something referring to itself, being able to take a grand look from above and be self-aware, if you like. So I mean, Rich, you know, do you want to talk about a couple of things, because we're big Metal Gear fans, Metal Gear heads that have happened in past games?
I guess the one that most people will recognise was when Psycho Mantis took control of your controller. So it almost the game realised you were playing a game, and you had to, I believe, change the controller to the next port or something.
To player 2, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a prime example of meta. It realises what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's breaking that fourth wall.
Exactly that. Yeah, I was just about to say it's breaking through the fourth wall, recognising what it is in itself. Because Mantis is literally saying to you, put your controller down, I'm going to make it move. It knows you're playing at home. And there's millions of other things he's done like that. There was the whole codec on the back of the game box that you needed in the game. And there's been other bits and pieces in preceding Metal Gear games, but we won't get too wrapped up in that. It's just to really state that, you know, he likes to be meta, and we know already that he has been with this game. And there's a lot of theories again in this Games Radar article about the fact that, well, for example, look at the character names in Death Stranding. They are pretty silly. You've got Heartman, Deadman, Mama. Sam, who is actually a courier / porter, is literally called Sam Porter Bridges. So it's all very kind of heavy-handed, seems a bit daft, but it's quite clever at the same time. I was saying to Rich before we started, but it's almost akin to when Mario was first introduced in Donkey Kong, his character was known as Jumpman, because, you know, the probably the least original name in eternity.
They're like the Ron Seal of character names.
Exactly, yeah.
They literally do exactly what they say on the tin.
Yeah, it's like they've just got to get a game out. Let's just call the character what he does, what his role is.
Yeah.
And Kojima's doing that. He's kind of he's referencing the fact that he knows it's a game, and he perhaps wants the player to realise that. And I was saying to Rich as well that, you know, we love immersion in video games, and I think Kojima does as well. It's very important. It makes a good video game great. And I think there's still going to be that. I think they can both exist together, a great level of immersion as well as a sense of meta, or self-referencing essentially. So, you know, the self-referencing part is kind of, it's challenging the player. It wants the player to, at least in moments, reflective moments, think about the game as a commentary against something else. So very broadly speaking, again, we'll try and keep this as neat as possible. But we mentioned in the last video that there's a strong vibe in this game of obviously connection. We talked about how he seems to be kind of advocating a socialist philosophy. So people coming together, working for, you know, the greater good, working for everybody's good, not just for, you know, your own kind of selfish motivations or your self-interest in your little sphere of life. It's working for everybody. So there's this kind of socialist message against a more kind of individualist lifestyle, I suppose, if you like. So not just a socialist philosophy though, but you might say as well, he's mentioned in a number of interviews that he thinks it's almost ironic this day and age where we're surrounded by all these digital interfaces, digital ways to connect with the world. You could say we're more connected than ever before. We can reach across the world, you know, in an instant. But I think ironically what he's saying is, and I think there's a lot of truth to this, we're almost also caged by these digital fortresses. These, you know, our mobile phones that we carry around with us are literally like lenses between us and the world. And they take away from our actual engagement in a very real way with the world around us and with each other. You know, we take millions of photos on holiday. Are we actually enjoying and experiencing that ourselves? We create these social media profiles. Are they real? Are they based on reality? Or are they just the version of ourselves that we want them to be? And we, you know, we talk and chat on the internet, but are we really getting out there like we used to, and, you know, seeing people in the flesh, having real conversations? I think there's a great argument to say, you know, a lot less so. So Kojima's basically saying that we've kind of got ourselves trapped behind these walls of digital media. And I think, you know, ironically, with the fact that we're engaging with a game, which is another form of digital media, with the way he handles this meta and metaphorical levels of meaning behind the game. He's trying to challenge the player to think about that, to think about the fact that we need to challenge ourselves to reach outside and break those patterns and those behaviours. And I think that's a lot to do with Ludens as well, because like I said, it's an aspirational figure. And I think Kojima perhaps sees right now as a potential turning point, whether we head down one avenue, which is getting even more enmeshed in the digital side of things, living these very individualist lives, cut off from people around us, or heading back, and you might say, regressing to how it used to be back in the day, when we would, live, work, and as more of a community. And literally, I think a lot of the game's mechanics are going to revolve around that and connection. So that's that as neatly as I can put it. So it's probably time to move on now, Rich, to this theory, I suppose. Again, the literal happenings in the game.
Sounds good.
So do you just want to give me a break and also tell everybody, why you've got some concerns about this? I suppose it's good to play devil's advocate on this one for me.
Well, it's difficult to, until you actually say your theory, it's difficult to pick holes in it.
But it's evidential, isn't it? You don't think I've got a great deal of evidence to go on with this?
Yeah, so as part and parcel of your theory, you think in some way we left to colonize the moon, don't you?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, that's probably at the heart of it.
And then something happened that meant we needed to come back because it didn't work, and that has led to us in some way all living in these underground bunkers. Now, I don't disagree that people are living in underground bunkers. My concern is the pod we've seen, this Ludens fan pod, although it might look like a spaceship, and I understand that it looks a bit like a space shuttle, the ones that NASA's have retired in the last 10 years or something. Mm-hmm. But there's no engines on it. So the back, where it's black, where you would expect there to be jet engines, is the door. I
know, but mate, they can disconnect, can't they, upon once it breaks into the atmosphere. It's usually the case that those sort of things are modular and they break apart. You don't usually find that the fuel and the rockets and the propulsion stay on the vessel.
Well, they do when they land the space shuttles, mate.
Well, if they want to reuse them, they tend to, don't they? But if it's something that's just going to have a one-way trajectory, or it's just going to have a specific function, as a space hab would.
I get what you're saying, but what you're saying is they've left Earth to go to the moon because of a cataclysmic event. So they've jettisoned the rockets when they've got to the moon, then, and then they've gone.
Well, hang on, because you're storming in here.
Bang some more.
You're storming in here and having a massive debate. I suppose I better get the facts out first, and then we can come back to this.
This is what I was saying.
So yeah, okay. Let's just kind of get the basis of my theory down. So, where did it all start? I think it probably started with bridges. We're essentially going to be the US government. I think there's probably some sort of crisis on Earth. So populations are just heaving. Perhaps there's a resource crisis, and there's a motivation therefore to, move on to other planets, to colonize and really extend our reach on the solar system, to look for other resource and look for other places to populate and inhabit, essentially. So I think bridges, and again, the name kind of connects with that, they want to bridge to other worlds. I think bridges kind of were perhaps the start of that. I still feel, and we've mentioned this in the videos, that Mads perhaps work for them. He's perhaps like a scientist figure, and was helping them, work towards build up the technology that was capable of helping them do that. Specifically, I think that he was probably working on something along the lines of teleportation, or at least, bending space and time to the extent that we can instantaneously travel great distances. We see this in the 9-minute trailer. Him talking to his BB and saying how one day we're going to be able to go anywhere, even to the moon. So you've already got this connection to the moon, literally what he's saying. So yeah, I think Mads was working on that. I think something went terribly wrong, which again in the 9-minute trailer we see at the start when he's covered in blood. He's talking, he's trying to console his BB. I'll always be with you. So something has clearly gone terribly wrong. Perhaps as part of that experiment, I don't know exactly what that science looks like. Maybe it's particle experiments. But I kind of think that perhaps there was an attempt to colonize the moon, as Rich has pointed out. I suppose we'll kind of dig into why I think that. So if we go to the recent gameplay video we've seen, there's a number of clues there. First of all, as we've kind of just mentioned, when Sam approaches the Ludens fan base or bunker, as most people seem to call it, and it does. Go on.
Space shuttle.
No, I'm not saying it's a shuttle. So I think it's a space hab. They sometimes refer to them as, which is essentially a habitat. So, it essentially does look like a bunker. But if you look at it, it does look very streamlined. It looks like
Agreed.
It's sort of crash landed. Because there's some disturbance on the ground below it, and clearly we see that there's an underground connection to it, isn't there, Rich? There's a door at the back which seems to go under and into the cliff. And what else do we know about that? Well, literally, Kojima very pointedly, he actually zooms in on the text on the side of it, which says, from Sapiens to Ludens, and what we've got on the flag up here. So that's almost, that's a statement of evolution, of, we're going to become something else, we're going to become something new. And again, that fits in with this whole motivation to let's evolve as mankind. Let's do the next big thing, which is colonizing planets, going, looking for resources on planets. Go on.
The one thing I was saying, it just occurs to me. So your theory is that they've gone to the moon and they've come back. I'm not going to say any more on that at this point. But actually, what have we seen of Death Stranding? All of the gameplay, it's a very sparse place, but it's almost untouched. So there's lots of wildlife, fauna. What about if they got to the moon and all the gameplay we've seen is on the moon, but they've terraformed it?
We're still there and it's just changed its atmosphere or whatever. It's very possible. Yeah. I like it. It's another rabbit hole to dive down. But yeah, let's continue with this. I like that. Stick a pin in that, or remember that. So anyway, we talked about the space hab. Next up in that gameplay, we see this moment where Sam, again, Kojima, very deliberately zooms in on two posters inside this, what I'm calling a space hab. And on there is Sam, essentially, literally references himself. He says, "How you doing, Sam?" He's talking to himself in the third person. And what does Sam happen to be wearing? Well, he's in Ludens gear. In one shot, slightly dressed down in Ludens gear, and in another shot, full on Ludens gear. Mm-hmm. So I think what that is, that's betraying Sam's connection to this whole, to Bridges originally, and this whole project to colonize and to travel to other planets. Because I think Sam was an astronaut. And I think he was probably a very famous astronaut. I'm thinking almost like a Captain America type figure who, is probably branded as this kind of national hero, going out to brave new worlds, to save humankind, if you like. And I think Bridges probably used him a little bit for that as well. And again, that is weighted out, that is given evidence, if you like, by the way the Ludens fan, for starters, he's a fan of Ludens. For what reason? Well, this is why, I think. But the way he speaks with him, he says something along the lines of, I thought you were never going to come, but, I'm so glad you're here. And is it something like, but, it is you after all, so of course you'd come. And we see on the poster, there's this tagline, "I'll keep coming." So it's almost like in this new world with this Death Stranding reality, they've kind of just rebranded their national hero, Sam, as this figure that's just going to keep coming. He's still going to save us in this new world. But then just to take us a step back, so we talked about, the space hab. what I think is, and what I've illustrated here on this picture, I think there was this perhaps attempt to send out a space station of some kind into the atmosphere, which had probably, thousands of these space habs connected to it, which are built to travel very short distances to other planets, or in this case the moon, land on the moon, or kind of crash land a little bit, and then they can essentially look to create an underground interconnected warren of a giant habitat for people to live and colonize the moon with, essentially. So that's the mainstay of my theory. But what I think happened was something obviously went terribly wrong, whether it was to do with that particular mission, whether at the same time Mads was chief scientist on the mission and he was experimenting with other things, perhaps even the chiral network, which we know is a thing in this new reality. And something went terrible. As we know, another massive explosion happened, which in one of the trailers, Sam literally references. And perhaps all this was kind of blown away, or the space station had to come back to Earth, which is why instead, interesting you say that, Rich, a minute ago about are they actually on the moon? But let's still stick with the fact that they're back on Earth. They've kind of repurposed these space habs as like bunkers on this new, very inhospitable version of the Earth. After the Death Stranding occurs, they've repurposed them as habitats for people to live in underground. And there's a new mission to reconnect everybody and to set up that infrastructure again so people can start to survive and hopefully thrive and pull themselves out of it. And I think the fact that Sam is initially very reluctant to help Bridges again, reconnect the world, we know that from the briefing trailer. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for those who haven't seen the briefing trailer, which hasn't officially been released, has been leaked. I think you can find it on YouTube. Someone's filmed it on their phone, basically.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been taken down by now, but it'll probably be publicised soon. But Sam, he's basically given the big talk by Die Hardman and Amelie, seemingly after Bridget has passed, and they're trying to, they're trying to motivate him to go on this mission following Amelie's footsteps. And he basically leaves the room, doesn't he? It looks like they're in the White House, does it, Rich? And he's basically saying, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get involved with your outfit again, almost like not after last time. Because perhaps it would make sense that he feels burned in some way if he was used as this kind of figure of national hope and, bravery, and it all went wrong, the blood's on their hands. Well, he's going to feel a bit like, well, I don't want to be involved in that lot again, because it was a total crock. In fact, made things 10 times worse than they already were. So yeah.
And if I can just link that to, I was recently watching one of the much, much earlier trailers, so 2017 trailer, and Sam isn't wearing the bridge baby. He's on a mission with some other people, and I think one of them gets pulled away, and there's a void out, and the void out leaves Sam, and Sam picks up the bridge baby as if that's his first bridge baby. And I feel like this is like him almost immediately after this. He gets this bridge baby after that, and then that somehow convinces him to go on the mission that they want him to do. I can't see what else makes him want to do that.
Something clearly melts his resolve, doesn't it? And there's an intervention there,
exactly.
but which will be interesting to see what. But yeah, I suppose just to wrap things up from my side, I also think, we've already seen Sam, and we've talked about how meta Kojima is. We've already seen Sam refer to himself. I think there is going to be a very conscious self-awareness within the game that multiple people are playing this, that multiple Sams exist. So essentially there is a multiverse, and there's a million other players out there playing as Sam, and we have to work together. I've said to Rich, I don't see how they can get away from that. It's going to be the elephant in the corner when they've got all these asynchronous mechanics, sharing lockers, entrusting cargo, working asynchronously to get past the BTs. I don't see how they're going to get away from that. And we know, was it Tribeca, Rich, that Kojima said something funny along the lines of, and at some point there'll be a special bit in the game where you'll see Sam in a different way and you'll love Sam. And I think that's a reference to perhaps, I've said this to Rich prior, we perhaps get our own space hab at some point and we become our own prepper. Or if you like, I become a prepper in Rich's world. because he may visit a particular bunker or space hab, and it's me in there. And, you know, we can interact in some kind of perhaps superficial way, but it will be a cute moment. You can imagine just seeing into somebody else's game and thinking, oh, wow, this is amazing. And, you know, again, connection, kind of a real sense of connection there. So, yeah, I think that's mostly my theory in as fewer words as I can possibly put it. Rich, I mean, is there any... Go on, now's your chance to really lay into me. Perhaps you want to mention the AMSS thing as well, because that was interesting.
Yeah, I think it says on the side of that pod, space shuttle, whatever we're calling
Space hab, yeah.
I think it says AMSS, which I think if you look up AMSS, if you dig deep enough, you can find some tech that basically is a way of connecting like space satellites to aeroplanes to ground units to...
That picture you sent me, it was like sending a network signal from land to satellite, which is then beamed to space to aircraft, or in this case, space station. And also therefore, you know, the moon, because once we've colonized the moon, you're going to need a way to give them, you know, internet access, network access. Or maybe chiral network.
When I think about this though, don't you think there's something actually wrong with the fact that all we've seen of this game is beautiful scenery? Like, the world's not like that. Even America is a massive country, and I don't think it's like that.
We do see a lot of wreckage as well, though, don't we? We do see a great deal of like destroyed buildings, tumbled down, dystopian. We've seen on the map in the Far East, there seems to be a big kind of, you know, a former city, because we see almost like a highway, we see roads, we see what look like buildings from a satellite point of view. So unless they've very quickly colonized the moon or another planet, then I find that one difficult to get too attached to. But no, I absolutely realise a lot of what I'm saying is an absolute stretch, but I'm just working off the evidence I can see and the only explanation for it. I mean, why would you put this from Sapiens to Ludens thing on? If it's just another meta thing and it's got nothing to do with the literal happenings of the game, potentially.
I think maybe you're missing my point. I'm not putting my thing out there to discredit what you're saying. I'm actually saying, is it right? They're on another planet. They're not necessarily the moon, but they're on another planet. They're not on Earth. That's why the geography of the United States is so weird compared to what it is. It doesn't even look like the United States. And obviously we've seen these like ridiculous scenery with like nothing in them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the very close up, as soon as the gameplay trailer, if you look at the very close up first little clip we see when you see the map, there's nothing. There's just scenery. But then, like a good distance from where Sam is, there's a massive building.
No, I like it.
Well,
you know, I think
if you looked at America on a map and you zoomed in that close, there would be stuff everywhere.
Yeah, but if there's been this massive cataclysm, mate, where, you know, almost akin to a Big Bang, because he talks about it on that scale, you know, the whole landscape will be decimated. But and we think it's 10 years ago, don't we, from the Heartman trailer? Which I suppose at the same time, 10 years isn't a great deal of time for things to decay and, you know, to that extent. So, yeah, let's stick a pin in that, and, you know, maybe that's another video for us, my friend. So, yeah, a little parting message from me based on Kojima's metaphors. Imagine the next time you send an email, you go on your phone, you know, you get lost on your lunch break instead of talking to your colleague, that the BTs in Death Stranding are representative of that. You know, I think that's what Kojima's getting at. I think BTs to Kojima are representative of these digital walls that we surround ourselves with, and that we need to try as humankind to reach past them and stop getting lost in them and being numb to life in that sense. That's a little parting thought from me. Have you got anything else you wanted to end on, Rich?
No, I think that's covered us off, really. I think it's a really interesting theory. Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap up because I
That's
think both of
marvellous.
our phones are dying, aren't they, at this moment in time? So we don't want to be lost in the Death Stranding, all this footage to be lost in the Death Stranding.
Exactly.
So yeah, please guys, I know I'm a rambling mess. It is quite late at night and it's the end of my week. So I was saying to Rich before we film this, I'm going to struggle to tie my thoughts together. So hopefully I've made some sort of coherent sense. Please drop your comments below. Let us know what your thoughts are. If you agree, disagree, what your theory might be. Love it. And remember, if you did like this video, please give us a like. It helps to grow the channel. If you didn't, a dislike. But we would appreciate a comment just to tell us what you didn't like about it, and we can look to fix that then. Yeah, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with everything we do, and ring that bell for notifications to jump on the videos as soon as we launch them. And I think that's probably about it. Another one for the archives.
Stamped and completed.